is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. Our chair, Ed Reyes, could not make it today. But with that, why don't we get started? And if I could ask Roberto to lead us through the agenda, please.
Yes, Councilman. Item 1 is a Department of Building and Safety report. It has to do with a presentation on the Performance Enhancement Program and a proposal to retain 80 positions set for layoff.
Okay, let's do this. I'm checking to see first if we have cards. We don't have any cards on item number 2. We don't have any cards on item number 3. So we could take those on consent. If that's okay with my colleague, Mr. Krikorian, 2 and 3 consent? Yeah, and we will go forward with item. And which item is the item for Mrs. Goldberg's report?
That's item 8, Council.
8. She will note and file that, so we're not taking that up. So we've got those items, and we'll go ahead with item number 1. Okay. Is staff here on this item?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ray Chan. I'm the Executive Officer of Department of Building and Safety. Thank you very much for the opportunity for us to discuss our proposal to retain 53 of the 74 enterprise fund employees who are slated for layoff. First of all, I want to talk about our future business. Our projected revenue for next year will be $90 million enterprise fund revenue, which is about 4% higher than this year. And based on our 10 years historical record, in order to handle the workload produced by $90 million, our department would need about 787 people. This would be the Warren workforce. However, because of the last 12 months, because of the early retirement incentive program and also other attrition, our department only currently has 705 employees, which is already 10% lower than the Warren workforce to handle a $90 million revenue workload. If we have to lay off 74 more additional enterprise fund employees, which includes 39 inspectors, 18 assistant inspectors, 11 engineers and 4 clerk typists, and 2 office engineering technicians, this will reduce our workforce to only 631 enterprise fund employees, which will be 20% lower than our Warren workforce. And this is really lower than we ever can remember in the past 35 years. Now, currently, with 705 employees, we are lagging behind with our plan check and inspection service to begin with. For example, our goal for plan check turnaround time would be 4 weeks, but the real time is 6 weeks. If we have to lay off another 74 employees, then our plan check time will be delayed to 10 weeks or more. And our there will be more and more inspections to be performed more than 24 hours, which is also our performance goal. Now, what does that mean? That means all the construction projects in LA will slow down. That means opening of business and also building occupancies will be delayed. That will also mean the tax revenues and also collection of other fees for the city will also be slowed down. Now, this is going to be a lot of damage to the recovery of the economy, especially at the time when construction activities are on the upswing. And let me illustrate that part a little bit. For the past 6 months, construction activity has been going up. For example, when compared to the same period last year, our construction valuation has increased by 39%. Our revenue has increased by 31%, and the number of permits has increased by 10%. Now, also, that there are many moderate size and large size projects that are in the pipeline. For example, the LAX, Tom Bradley, modification. Also, we talk about the Midtown Crossing project over in different CD10. And also the Emerson College in Hollywood the Eli Bro Museum coming up, and the USC, the village plan, and so forth. These are all in the pipeline for next year and beyond. And in addition to that, the department, under our general manager's direction, we put together this performance enhancement program. This is the PEP. This is a program that includes over 98 action items to improve this department, to reorganize the department, to re-engineering our process so we could better assist, guide, advise, and serve the industry. What we're asking here is this. We have to lay off the people, then many of these programs cannot be implemented. To avoid any more injury to the suffering construction and development industry, and at the same time give the department a chance to serve the industry the way that we should, we're asking the committee and the council to consider allowing us to use the furlough to retain 53 out of the 74 employees who are slated for layoff. Now, with that said, we understand that there are some concerns out there for allowing us to use the furlough to avoid layoff or to minimize layoff. And one of the concerns, we believe that we can address all those concerns. First concern is that furlough is a temporary solution and it is not a permanent fix. But to our department, furlough is a temporary solution as well as a permanent fix, especially at this time. Construction activities, as I mentioned, is on the upswing, and furlough will act as just a stopgap measure to take us to the permanent fix. And there's another concern saying that if the enterprise fund is not as expected, then what would happen? Would retaining these employees instead of laying them off burden the general fund? The answer is no. The enterprise fund will not burden the general fund because we will work with the CAO to come up with a trigger system. If in case our revenue does not come in as expected, then we will implement layoff proportionally. Concern number 5 is, will retaining the 54 employees as we propose create a negative fiscal impact on the general fund? The answer is also no, because the enterprise fund has been, is, and will pay for all fringe benefits, including the retirement, the health, the workers' comp, central service, and lease payment. So, but on the contrary, laying off these employees will have a negative impact to the general fund because for every employee the city lay off, the general fund has to pay $11,700 for unemployment insurance benefit. So we have to remember that. The last concern is, will imposing furloughs on enterprise fund create any legal threats? The department feels that this is not going to be the case because currently all LADBS employees, whether you're general fund or enterprise fund, we are on furlough to begin with. If there's a legal problem, we are in that problem. We are in the eye of the problem already. Also, not to mention that the upcoming fiscal year, the budget does propose to have all general fund and all split fund positions to be on furlough. That is to say, like myself, I am paid by 80% my salary 80% by the enterprise fund, 20% by the general fund, but I will be on furlough just like a general fund staff. So if there's a legal portion, then my enterprise fund portion will be also create a legal problem. And lastly, our need to furlough enterprise fund staff is not because we want to create a uniformity like the state government did, and that's why they're in trouble. Our needs to furlough enterprise fund staff is because of our financial needs. So it's completely different, and we do not believe this will pose a legal threat. In conclusion, I just want to ask everybody to remember that the enterprise fund is paid by the construction development industry for us to provide service in a timely manner. And we have to pick the option to provide the best option to handle our resource in order to provide our service in the most effective and efficient manners. And in this case, the best option is to allow the department to furlough instead of laying off our staff. And I'm done with my presentation. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm here to answer any question.
Thank you. And just one quick question. So your proposal does not have any impact on the general fund because
Yes.
Because it's mostly through the enterprise fund, right?
Yes.
But if we keep moving forward with the other proposal, you said it would cost us 11,000 per employee?
Yes, it would be about 11,700 because the general fund has to pay for the unemployment benefits.
Okay, got you. Any questions, Mr. Krikorian, before we go up to public comment? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go to public comment now. Kimberlina Wettam? Kimberlina Wettam, not here? Okay. Mark Ambruster. After Mark Ambruster is Steve Catalano.
Hello, Mark Armbruster, Armbruster, Goldsmith, and Delbeck. I'll be very brief and say the same thing that Kimberlina, I think, was going to say, and that is that we support the Building and Safety Department's position in this, and whatever can be done to avoid layoffs would be helpful because processing permits in a timely manner and approvals in building and safety is a great way to generate jobs in this struggling economy, and we certainly need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Catalano. After Steve Catalano is Holly Schroeder.
Good afternoon. Steve Catalano, Kendall Gagan. I just wanted to come in. I was here on another item to speak on behalf of retaining these positions. We have several major development projects, one in the ground now, Sonic Automotive, which is Beverly Hills BMW moving into the city of Los Angeles, is being expedited by the Department of Building and Safety, and the faster that those cars can be sold, the quicker the city will generate the revenue from the car sales. Had a major press conference this morning with another client, Baxter, with the governor and the mayor. It was a business retention project. This 1,200 jobs was slated to leave the city and leave the state. One of the two factors that kept them here was the fact that we were able to work out a streamlined scheduling for permit processing through the Department of Building and Safety. So that was a major business retention project that is in the news today. I strongly support my good friend Ray in keeping those positions because this is going to turn around quickly.
Great. Thank you very much. Holly Schroeder. After Holly is Jody Wood.
Good afternoon.
Schroeder or Schroeder?
Schroeder.
Schroeder.
Holly Schroeder with the Building Industry Association. First, I just wanted to thank the Building Safety Department for putting together the Performance Enhancements Program. It's really a comprehensive look at the department from new General Manager Overham, and want to thank him for his attention and Ray Chan's work on that as well. We support the program of moving towards furloughs rather than layoffs. As Mr. Chan indicated, it's going to be really important that we can scale the workforce as the building industry recovers, and we also support one of the items that is in the program that indicates that we need to be thinking about that flexibility and scalability of the department long term, whether that looking at the long term potential impacts of ERIP. We want to make sure that we can add workforce as it's needed as construction increases, whether that involves continued use of retired employees or other contracting out, but it's going to be very important for us to have a flexible workforce as the industry recovers. So again, we would prefer the furlough plan to the layoffs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jody Wood. After Jody Wood is Jim McQuiston.
Hi, I'm Jody Wood with California Home Builders. I'm also speaking on behalf of my boss, Sean Evenheim, who couldn't be here. We support the department's request to retain the 53 of the proposed 74 layoff of the enterprise fund revenue. Recently, we've obtained a permit for 81 units, a condo project. We're in the process of obtaining permits for 8 single-family homes, 48 apartment units, 57 detached homes, and a few more. Throughout the years, the Department of Building Safety have been extremely helpful and customer service oriented, which encourage us to continue building in the city of Los Angeles. They have been able to provide such service throughout the years due to a few reasons. One of them was the way this department was organized, and the other is that the department had sufficient manpower to handle the workload. The request to lay off 74 employees from the department will substantially impair the department's ability to adequately serve the construction and development industry in Los Angeles. Such action will delay our projects and cause us substantial damages. So we support the...
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim McQuiston?
Jim McQuiston. I just want to say a few comments about that. I really support Mr. Parks's idea that building and safety ought to look for people who are not permanent, who are on authority instead, if they want to handle a workload problem. And the other thing that I do want to say is, as a actually practicing registered engineer who has to have these plans looked at, there is kind of a fiction involved, because really looking at a plan, you really cannot get everything. And believe me, from bitter experience, that is true. Perhaps we ought to look at a different organization for building and safety so that we don't spend so much time trying to look at plans and rather look at what is actually being built. And that would save considerable manpower as far as that goes, and it would help Mr. Chan out considerably. And that's my comment I want to put in here.
Thank you very much. Any questions now, Mr. Krikorian, or no? I fully support this report as outlined by Mr. Chan. I think if it does not affect our general fund and continues and allows them to continue doing the work they're doing, he outlined a number of projects, big projects that are coming through the pipeline that they would need the additional support. I would ask that we adopt the report and send it to Budget and Finance, the next committee. If concurrence with that, Mr. Krikorian, is that okay? So without objection, this report will be adopted and forwarded to Budget and Finance. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item. Okay, I'm sorry. Item number one, if we can ask for a CLA and CAO report back to Budget and Finance. If CLA and CAO could also report on this item as it goes to Budget and Finance. Thanks. Next item.
Next item, Councilman, is item 4. It's an appeal by David Applebaum, and this has to do with an appeal as it relates to a sign change, and it's for a community arts center, a gym, and a swimming pool in CP2.
Thank you very much. Staff?
Good afternoon, council members. Tom Glick, City Planning Department. I'm going to be very brief on this because essentially the Planning Department, the applicant, and the council office are on essentially the same page with this project. But just a quick background, Campbell Hall has been in this location since 1944. Current enrollment is 800. With this expansion, they're expanding not only their facilities under this entitlement, but their enrollment to 1,200 students. This was approved by Planning Commission on the 28th of January. Planning Commission had one major concern. It wasn't a concern, it was actually they felt the proposed new theater building that the applicant was proposing that was facing the river should better orient towards the river. They imposed a condition, a series of along their parking area along the river, a series of landscaped areas. The applicant and the appellant that was what the appellant actually stated in his appeal. He was concerned that the loss of parking would result from Commission's condition, so he appealed that very condition, or that condition the Commission imposed. However, I believe the applicant has submitted revised plans that he's submitted to Plum, that the Planning Department pretty much satisfies the spirit of what Planning Commission intended to derive here, which was an overlook onto the river from the school. We also accept all the other conditions that the applicant has submitted in terms of corrections of Commission's, more clarifications to Commission's actions.
Great, thank you. We have 2 speaker cards. Mr. Krikorian, do you want to ask questions or guide us in this discussion, or should we take the public speakers first? Okay. Okay. R.J. Comer.
Good afternoon. I'm R.J. Comer for the applicant Campbell Hall. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank staff for the hard work on this project. The revised conditions that staff just referenced have been submitted, and I just wanted to illuminate particularly the Commission's request to add a small park area near the wash. The revision is actually a 700 square foot, what we call a Discovery Patio Park, which allows an area where students and faculty can be near the park and use that as an opportunity for a learning experience without losing any of the surplus parking which the neighborhood council specifically requested be preserved. So it's a very good solution, and all of the other revisions to conditions are just really cleanup conditions, and staff has agreed to them. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker is David Applebaum.
Hello, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to have made the appeal. The issues that I had seems as if they have been addressed with this recent compromise, so I have no further comments unless you're going to not approve them, because it seems to be it's a win-win. So thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Kikora?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is exactly what the gentleman said. This is a win-win. I think this is going to be an outstanding project. Campbell Hall is a terrific institution in my district. This project is going to make it even better. It has the support of my office. So I would ask that we grant the appeal in part and deny it in part and approve the project with the modified conditions that were referenced.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll make that into a motion, and is that clear enough for City Attorney and staff to
Terry Kaufman, Messia City Attorney's Office. There's just two different pages that are here, so just make it clear which modifications are going forward.
Can staff help us? Is our planning staff here again? I think there was a compromise reached. We just want to make sure we are clear for the record which ones we are adopting.
Okay. They were the applicant's changes, so I'll have Mark Armbruster and RJ come up here. It was the one you submitted yesterday, right?
Yes, what you have, they're both exactly the same, except for one is redlined to show what the actual changes were.
Okay.
The wording is precisely the same in both documents.
Okay.
And Planning Department will turn around the corrected zone change ordinance ASAP.
Okay. Thank you very much. So ordered. Thank you very much. Next item.
Item 5, Councilman, it's an appeal by Andrew Schwartz from the Hollywood Heritage and Robert Blue from the La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association. This has to do, it's an appeal relative to the construction of a Target store in CD 13.
Okay, there's been a request to continue this item for 2 weeks. City Attorney, is there any, do we concurrence by the applicant or any of that?
Well, the applicant.
Is the applicant here? You should be. Okay, sorry, you had that other case too, huh? You in concurrence with a continuance for 2 weeks?
RJ Comer for the applicant Target. Yes, we are.
Okay, and I understand there's been a request by the council office as well to allow the public to speak, since it will be continued for 2 weeks, but we wanted to hear from the public. We have a number of cards here. Typically, we give 2 minutes. We are going to give 1 minute per speaker. If you want to be strategic and mindful, if you've heard a comment be made, the same point be made over and over, it behooves you and helps if you not continue to repeat that, but perhaps bring up other issues you may be concerned with. But then again, it's at your discretion. So we will first, we'll start off with, and again, City Attorney, if we have a public hearing today, will we have one at the next meeting in 2 weeks?
Just don't, if the purpose is to continue the public hearing, then just hold it open, don't close it.
Okay. So we will hold open the public hearing for the next round as well. You'll have another opportunity at that time to speak again when the matter comes before us in 2 weeks. If you do not wish to speak today, please let me know as I call your name. Officer Langsdale? Not here? Here? Okay. After Officer Langsdale is Alfredo Hernandez.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Officer Langsdale. I'm with Hollywood Vice. Can you hear?
Pick it up a little bit. Yeah, thank you. It's hard to hear in here. Okay.
Anyways, I'm with Hollywood Vice, and the only issue that the only reason why this came across our table was because Target was proposing some off-site sales of alcohol, similar to like a like a Ralph's store or any liquor store, something like that. And we have no opposition to it. And to speak to the development of that area where Target is proposing to go into, we're in full support of it because right now it's kind of a derelict strip mall, and it's not the best. It's not the best look that we're looking for. I think that with some improved development, we would see some of that neighborhood blight kind of go away, and that's why we support it. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir. Alfredo Hernandez. After Alfredo Hernandez is Lori Goldman.
Lori left, so I'll be the only. Oh, she's still here?
That's why usually we don't take anybody else's word. We allow them to come up.
You're going to hear a lot of talk about traffic and how the Target's going to cause a lot of traffic in the area. I beg to differ. A lot of people in this community go to Target. Currently, their only Target is in West Hollywood, which means you're driving through this community to get there and through this community to get back home. So you're basically eliminating a lot of traffic by creating one there. Also, that other Target is in West Hollywood, which means tax revenue is going to West Hollywood, not LA. So if you create a Target in Hollywood, which is in LA, you're getting this money back. For months, all I heard was, we didn't get the tax revenue we thought we were going to get. Now you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori Goldman. After Lori Goldman is Arthur Casson.
Hello, council members. I'm here only to acknowledge that Hollywood Heritage, as a board member, is not a party to this appeal. It was an error in the filing of the appeal by Mr. Schwartz, and we have sent a letter to the file.
Okay, great. Thank you. So noted. Thank you very much. Arthur Casson. After Arthur is Aaron Epstein. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Arthur Casson. I'm a consulting traffic engineer. I've been a registered traffic engineer, and I've been practicing for 50 years. The traffic study in the EIR is out of date. It was completed nearly 2.5 years ago in February 2008. It is based on traffic counts that are 3 to 5 years old, counts made in 2005 to 2007. Certainly, those cannot be considered as portraying current conditions. The study year for the analysis was 2010. That is not relevant to a project that will not be completed and fully operational until 2012. The traffic that will be generated by the project is significantly underestimated because a 20% credit has been taken for transit use. That credit is unrealistically high considering the location of the project and the target customer shopping patterns. That results in substantial underestimation of the future impacts of the project traffic. I have a lot more to say, but I guess I cannot. I have submitted four letters of comment to the planning department, and I request that you refer to those. The points are all spelled out in those letters.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Aaron Epstein. After Mr. Epstein is Andrea Goodman.
Thank you, dear friends. I'm extremely disappointed in the way the bureaucracy of this committee and the council offices are working now. This is the third time I've come down to speak about this issue. Each time I have come down, the item has been postponed, which is understandable, except each time I come down, I first call Ms. Lattimore and I ask her, is it still on the agenda? She's very nice, and she gives me the information that she has up to her date, time, and she says it is still on the agenda. But I called, for example, this morning. She says it's on the agenda, but call the council's office. So I call Councilman Garcetti's office. The person who answered the phone says, as far as we know, it's on the agenda, but talk to Miss Lattimore. So I called back Miss Lattimore. And she says, well, call such and such at Councilman Garcetti's office. I called that person. They were not available. I came down this afternoon. I talked to Miss Lattimore. She says, well, as far as I know, it's on, but talk to Councilman Garcetti's deputy. And I don't know where she is. And she told me, oh, yes, it's been postponed, but we'll let you talk. Please, there must be a better way of doing things. I am 79 years old. It is not easy for me to get on the red line and come down here, but I'm more than happy to do it for a cause. But I ask for respect from the people here in City Hall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I apologize for that. Yes, there are a number of stakeholders involved that have asked us to be continued, and that is what happened today as well. I apologize. Andrea Goodman?
Hi, I'm here to speak for the Assistance League of Southern California. We are the adjacent property owner across DeLongpre from where the proposed Target store will be. We are a very large nonprofit organization. We operate a preschool in the area, a theater for children. We have a senior center there as well. Currently on DeLongpre and in that vacant lot where the Target will go, there is like gambling that happens during the day. It's just basically a very derelict, rundown place. And our experience with Target has been that they're a very good community partner. They've supported a number of our volunteer and charitable services, providing uniforms to students, books to students in LAUSD. And we think that they would make a nice partnership for us. We currently have a lot of families that come to us for counseling. We have seniors that come in. They have no place to shop in the area, and we feel that Target would be a very welcome addition. And it would also do a lot to improve the neighborhood. In terms of traffic, I don't see how the Target could generate any more traffic than the Home Depot does. It's right across the street.
Thank you. Doug Haynes. After Doug Haynes is Robert Blue.
Hi, my name is Doug Haynes. I'm with the La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association. And first I'd like to point out a couple of things. Although I have certainly respect for the Vice Officer from the Holly Division, I've included for your review from the initial study. There wasn't an EIR done in this project. A letter from the police department saying that a project of this size would have a significant impact on police services in the Hollywood area. Also, I'd like to point out that any blight that's at this site is certainly self-imposed by the applicant. And I will bring up what I brought up before, that there was a recycling center on this site that it took 9 months for the city attorney's office to close down by taking to criminal court because Target refused, even though they control the lease, to shut it down. So Target has not been a good neighbor for this community, and I hope that's on the record. I also would like to point out that Target has had almost a year since this appeal was filed to resolve the community's concerns and completing the EIR. Instead, they've been dismissive and negative to our suggestions and focused not on the project's details, but on efforts to buy us off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robert Blue. After Mr. Blue is David Bell.
Thank you. First of all, I object to the limitation of 1 minute, but I did want to make the point that this isn't against Target. It's like if Target's going to come in, do it right. And we're really given a false choice between doing it right or flying in the face of the Vermont SNAP plan. If it's supposed to be pedestrian friendly, and I think that's a good idea, it should be, for example, at street level, and it's a self-imposed hardship of the cost of putting in underground parking. They've granted several variances. The variances just serve to enrich the value or decrease the amount of construction costs. But again, this isn't, it's a false choice. It's not a choice between no Target or a Target. They're telling you it's our way or the highway. Actually, you can have Target in there and just do it right. Just follow the plan as specified by your planning department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Bell. After Mr. Bell is Dan Wright.
Good afternoon, David Bell. I'm an attorney on behalf of Appellant Robert Blue. There's two things. The first is that I think that the project as is proposed right now and the exceptions to the specific plan should be denied at this point. They're required to make specific findings, mandatory factual findings on behalf of each of the specific exceptions to the plan, and there are no findings to the plan. And in fact, what it really appears to be is that they're creating some type of a special privilege here criteria for Target based upon the alleged desirability of the project. There isn't anything in the specific findings that supports a special hardship or supports any kind of an exception from the specific plan. In fact, the findings revert to projects that were there before the plan was in place and don't support the findings. And finally, at least there should be an EIR issued in this case, because they seem to be holding the people requesting an EIR. The EIR is the heart of CEQA. It's designed to give the public information about the project, and they're requiring the people asking for the EIR to provide specific findings in support of the EIR, when all that's required is to raise a fair question of a significant impact on the community.
Thank you. Dan Wright. After Mr. Wright is Richard Platkill.
Daniel Wright of the Silverstein Law Firm, 215 North Marengo, 3rd floor, Pasadena 91101, on behalf of the La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association of Hollywood. I wanted to welcome Mr. Krikorian to the committee. It's the first time I know it's hard. At its heart, this is a case about citizenship. Target Corporation wants to be in Hollywood and voluntarily acquired interest in this parcel of land, knowing the limits of the Vermont Western Transit-Oriented Specific Plan. Target wants the financial benefits of being in Hollywood, for which it will reap untold benefits. The current West Hollywood store generates about $100 million of revenue. Yes, it'd be good for that revenue and that tax base in the city of LA, but as other speakers have said, it needs to be done right, and that's going to take more money than Target's willing to put on the table. They need to properly mitigate this project, and they need to offer better benefits than slamming the door in the face of the community. That is not good citizenship. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard Platkill. After Mr. Platkill, Ziggy Cruz.
I'm Richard Platkin, a city planning consultant, speaking on behalf of the appellants. I want to speak to the specific finding that specific plan exceptions and any decisions related to the appeals, as well as the design guidelines, all require a finding of consistency with the general plan of the City of Los Angeles. And as decision makers, the three councilmen on the Plum Committee need to know that this plan does not meet, this project does not meet those findings. The specifics, the general plan is growth neutral. That means that every discretionary action needs to comply with it, and it needs to demonstrate that there's a need based on growth in a region such as Hollywood to grant an exception to the specific plan. In this case, the planning department and the applicant Target have not demonstrated any factual basis that Hollywood has grown to such an extent that the height limits can be busted. I have written testimony I'll give to your clerk.
Thank you. Ziggy Cruz. Afterwards is Jim McQuiston.
Good afternoon. I'm Ziggy Cruz, and I'm a former member of the Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council. The Neighborhood Council voted against the Target store because it completely ignores almost every zoning law in East Hollywood. The specific plan has a 35-foot height limitation for this area, yet Target received exceptions to go to 80 feet. On top of eliminating any setbacks above the roof line for an additional 10 feet or 90 feet total in height. No other building has done that. No other building even approaches the height proposed by Target, which has $65 billion in sales last year, yet claims they can't afford subterranean or rooftop parking. Target also received variances to reduce or eliminate the requirements for building step-backs by varied roof lines and building transparency, meaning that this project, which covers an entire city block, will look like the Beverly Center. At the Central Planning Commission hearing back a few months ago, CEDs 13 stated that Target originally came in with a one-story pedestrian-oriented store, but that council office just preferred the other way around. They just totally pushed the taller project. I just want to point out one more thing. The Neighborhood Council offered back then to have representatives to be flown out to meet with Target hand on hand. Target totally ignored us. We've been ignored throughout the entire time by various members of the community as well as the representatives. So with these kind of things, I wish that your commission really takes a little better, closer look at it and sends them back to the drawing board and maybe apply to the wishes of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim McQuiston. After Mr. McQuiston is John Pereira.
Jim McQuiston, you have my statement. It says mostly what I am concerned about. Now, you know, I used to do all these negotiation things, and I thought that was the way to go. And then there was the Anaya case, and we all remember the Anaya case. They pulled up some Supreme Court decisions which said, we're doing it all wrong. And they have exactly the same arguments that we're doing wrong that the city does wrong. And so we have to reform. We think that Ms. Goldberg should be allowed to fix the plans, and then the city council just has to stay out of it. But the plans have to be good to start with, and we all think they should be fixed. But we have to let Ms. Goldberg do that, and we can't interfere unless something is wrong. And the Supreme Court, California Supreme Court, in 2 cases specifically said, you can't operate this particular way. And it's been forced down the city of Los Angeles through the Anaya case. So we really should take that to heart.
Thank you, Mr. McQuiston. John Pereira. After John is Kenneth Owen.
Hi, John Perica, retired zoning administrator. Approving this request simply guts the specific plan for the area. It makes it meaningless. It sets a terrible precedent for other development that's too intensive for the community to come in and cite this case if you grant it. In effect, you're not acting on one case today, you're acting probably on a dozen cases for the next 20 years in the Hollywood area. They're going to point to this precedent. The number of deviations is 8. I've never heard of that many before. The findings are just inadequate for that, and yet you're allowing this case to set the driving key for future development in the community that's out of scale. The project can be reduced to meet the specific plan. Put the parking underground. You can lower the height for that. The irony is there are no precedents cited according to the legal findings that justify other cases that have had this same type of approval that's being asked for right now. But if you approve it, you are going to set a precedent for dozens of other cases.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Kenneth Owen.
I'd like to reiterate the comments of Mr. Perica, which are consistent. This is in the SNAP area. SNAP was a compromise agreement between the community and developers. Each got something and each gave something. To allow a developer such as Target to get rights beyond those which were given by this compromise defeats the whole purpose of SNAP. Such exceptions are requested here will destroy the social compact with the community and result in demands for substantive changes in the SNAP deal. Here it is particularly egregious given the developer is very big and very rich and seeks to bust the height limit solely to avoid the cost of subterranean parking. It in effect wants the community to give up its views and sense of community to save Target a few pennies per share for its stockholders. Part of the SNAP deal was to allow added height to encourage mixed-use development close to the red line. Here, the opportunity to have residential living close to Western and Hollywood Station is lost. To grant this application is poor planning and destructive of the efforts of the planning department and the community in the fashioning SNAP to provide mixed-use housing near transportation while preserving the existing feeling of community. The recommendation to allow this project as proposed makes a mockery of special plans and bodes ill for the Hollywood community plan.
Great. Thank you very much. And again, this item will be continued for 2 weeks. We did want to allow for public speaking today. I apologize to those of you who've had to return a number of times, and hopefully we could hear it fully at the next hearing. And we will, for the record, keep the public hearing open for our next meeting, so we could also again hear from the public at that time. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, Councilman, is item 6. It's a report from the North Valley ABC. This is an appeal filed by Marlene Radar. It has to do with a North Valley APC granting of a variance for a truck driving training academy.
Thank you. We will hear from staff first.
Good afternoon, Lynn Wyatt for the Office of Zoning Administration, representing the Planning Department. The appeal before you today is in regards to a zone variance that was approved by myself, and my decision was sustained on appeal before the North Valley Area Planning Commission. The variance has to do with a truck driving academy comprised of 8 trucks and approximately 24 students who will be shuttled up onto the Lopez Canyon site, attend driver training classes on top at the Deck A portion of the landfill, as you see on the maps before you, and then ultimately they will be driven down the hill by licensed drivers who will then change places with them and conduct driver training on the freeways and other portions of the city. The conditions that were approved by the North Valley Area Planning Commission specifically dictate the locations as to where these trucks cannot drive, which include Lopez Canyon Road and various other locations in regards Cagle Canyon, as well as portions below, south of the area between Gladstone, Foothill, and Osborne. You'll hear challenges in regards to the mitigated negative declaration that was issued in regards to the request, and as to the appropriateness of the environmental clearance. The environmental clearance was prepared by the Bureau of Engineering, certified by both myself and the decision maker, the the North Valley Area Planning Commission. And in certifying that document, there are no significant impacts associated with this project. Mitigation measures have been imposed in regards to noise, air quality, as well as visual and aesthetic impacts in association with the project. Ultimately, the benefits in association with this, the findings can be made in the affirmative in regards to the variance. This is a unique site in both its location, in relation to the project objectives that have been outlined as part of the Truck Driving Academy, as well as the physical properties of the site. As a landfill that's currently going through closure process, the landfill itself cannot be actively used for either passive nor active recreational purposes for the next 15 years. And so at this point in time, the area in which the Truck Driving Academy will be located is on a flat portion on the upper tier of the landfill and the Deck A, which remains paved and must remain paved for the next 15 years. Part of the closure activities require that the pavement allows for runoff, which is then collected and then dissipated, and so that the toxins and whatever is exuded from the dump site itself ultimately are taken off-site and no longer in association with the property. Upon completion of that closure activity, then it can be used for open space. So we felt that it was appropriate for a 5-year period, which is what the term of the variance is to allow this Truck Driving Academy to be conducted on that site. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Before I go to public comment, one of the items of appeal is that an EIR should have been prepared as opposed to a mitigated negative declaration. What's the planning staff's response to that?
The response to that is the mitigated negative declaration is the appropriate analysis. An initial study was prepared, and based on that initial study and the information analysis that was conducted, it did not warrant it. It did not exceed the thresholds nor the significant levels that are imposed either by the agencies, including the SCA QMD, as well as the City of Los Angeles under our CEQA guidelines. And so ultimately, there is no fair argument, nor is there any substantial evidence provided by the appellant to support the need for an EIR. I think part of their argument is based on it. They feel that the variance is an inappropriate application and that this should be completed under a general plan amendment and zone change. And they infer that a EIR is automatically required when you do a general plan amendment and zone change. That is inaccurate. That is not true. We've had a number of both zone change and general plan amendment joint applications come through the city for numbers of years that have been done under MNDs. It does not automatically require an EIR. And again, in this particular case, there's no evidence to support, there's no science to support given by the appellant that would require an EIR.
Okay, so we applied an MND, and under the planning staff's view, it was sufficient.
There was a noise study accomplished, there was an air quality analysis done, there was also a line of sight analysis completed, all of which addressed issues that were identified in the initial study. Some of the other issues that have been identified by those challenging the MND are not related to the project site. For instance, a wildlife corridor. At this point in time, in the future it may support that, but at this point in time, and even in the near future, it does not do that. This land is totally denuded based on the need for the closure operation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions now? And before we go into public comment, Mr. Krikoros?
Yeah, one sort of technical question, I guess. One of the arguments made by the appellants is that this variance would be a prohibited use variance. Can you respond to that argument, please?
The open space has limited use as to what's available to it. The city confers use variances on a number of occasions, so it's not that the city does not concur with, with essentially what our abilities are in order to be able to go ahead and do a use variance. In this particular case, we can make the affirmative findings that there are special circumstances, special need, the objectives of the applicant, ultimately that all allow us to make these affirmative findings for a variance. And the variance is the appropriate process in this particular relationship because we don't want to confer a long-term sort of entitlement and perpetuity for this property. The intent behind all of this is not to change the zoning, not to go for a general plan amendment and zone change, which is what the appellant is trying to do and wants us to do, or encourage us to move in that direction if we're going to process this application. The variance is the appropriate one. We can make the findings. It gives a short interim use. It applies the conditions that we can do so under this that we might not have available to us under a general plan amendment and zone change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have quite a bit of cards here, and we also have a stack of cards for people who want to show their either support or opposition to the application. I will read their names into the record after the public speakers. Our first speaker is Robert Lanishaw. Afterwards is James Garrison.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Robert Lamashaw with JPL Zoning Services, representing the Bureau of Sanitation in this matter. The issue before you is not Lopez Canyon. It is not the use of the facility for trash. It is not the closure plan. It is taking 0.25% of land which cannot be used for anything else and allowing a truck training academy which will help provide needed educational opportunities and a career path for people who may not have another means of doing this. A large number, a percentage of the students at this will come from CD7. A lot of them will be city employees who need to be retrained because of cutbacks in employment within the city. It's a great opportunity that has a trivial impact on the operations that are existing at this site. It's important to realize that this portion of Deck A had already been approved for the ongoing mulching facility which exists there. That is not going to take place. They're not going to be using it for mulching. So basically, the amount of traffic involved, the amount of noise involved, the amount of activity involved will actually be less than had been previously approved. This is consistent with the existing closure plan. The state regulatory agencies have said that it is consistent. The environmental analysis has determined that it is trivial, and you have to remember we're talking about a 1.5 acre portion of nearly a 600 acre site, 0.25%. We strongly urge you to deny the appeal and support the decisions of the Area Planning Commission and staff.
Great, thank you very much. James Garrison. After James Garrison is Ed Rendon.
Council members, thank you. I come here as Board Treasurer, Transportation Opportunity Program. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, tax-exempt organization where the board consists of business people like myself, people from the trucking industry, and people transportation industry backgrounds such as the Teamsters. I'm actually here in support of, actually in opposition of the appeal. And I also want to mention I'm a board member of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a board member of Valley Industry and Commerce. Both organizations do strongly support this effort. It comes at a difficult time. We have funds given to us. The training at this program is all funded either by federal or state monies. We have ARA funds dedicated to the Valley to do job training in the Valley. Truck driving is identified by the federal government, by the state of California, as one of 3 high-growth areas of training and job opportunities. During this difficult economic time, business would like to retain employment here in California. We'd like to give opportunities for education in this career path to people in the Valley. We have the funds there. We hope that you will oppose the appeal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ed Rendon. After Ed Rendon is Hector Rendon.
Okay.
Any relation?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Papa Rendon. Good afternoon, council members or committee members. I come also as Jim. I'm part of the same board, the Transportation Opportunity Program, where we achieved great results with this program before with WIB-funded dollars and California Employment Training Panel dollars. A very model, a good, strong model for public-private ventures. And as Jim had mentioned, it's composed of community partners, workforce centers, labor, industry leaders, and we achieve great results in a time of need of jobs. So I come here as a Teamsters Joint Council political director, a board member, and a former WIB member who was part of this program at all levels. And we hope to bring good jobs to the area and take this model to other parts of the region. So we oppose this appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ed Rendon is, read the name for the record, supports the project, opposes appeal. Larry Frank? Larry Frank. Okay, not here. Jose Bayanilla. After Jose Bayanilla is Praxides Hernandez. Prahides.
Good afternoon, City Council members. I'm here today in support of the project. I'm a former graduate of the Truck Driving Academy, and I just want to let you guys know that it is a very good opportunity for the community. It has helped me and my family by me obtaining my Class A license and being able to find employment. I just want to show my support today. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? What location did you attend the academy?
At Long Beach, and it's a very far drive from the Valley. Also, I also represent Teamsters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez Prahides, and after Mr. Hernandez is Paulo Corona. What's your name?
Praxides Hernandez.
Praxides.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of myself because this is going to be good training for me and opportunity to get back on the job force because I'm unemployed right now. So I really appreciate if you guys can approve this. It also will save me a lot of time to come over to whatever the training is going to be. Okay, and I don't have no money to pay for gas or whatever, so I would like to be on the Valley. This is better for me. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Paulo Corona, Jr. Not here. Magdalena Duran. After Magdalena Duran is Philip Iniguez.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address. I am with El Proyecto del Barrio. We are the community-based organization that has partnered with the TOP program over the last 3 years. It has been a long haul for people to drive from the Valley to Long Beach to complete their program, which has been the case for the last 3 years. The last 2 years, we have been working at finding a location that is really suitable for the San Fernando Valley, and we have found it. We are talking about a very small sliver of this area, and we represent the community. We represent people who are looking for jobs, but these people are also green people. As you see by my T-shirt, there are people who want to see that open land area. They have children they want to see play there. We're all in the same, towards the same direction. There is no difference. So we just want, for a little short time, 5 years, while this landfill comes down, we want to be able to use that little area of the mulching area to train and get people and their families back on their feet. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Philip Inigas. And Mr. Frank, do you still wish to speak? Okay, after Mr. Inigas, you're up.
Yes, hi, my name is Philip. My name is Philip Inigas, and I was sponsored by El Proyecto del Barrio, and I live in the San Fernando Valley, and I had to drive all the way to the city of Bell. Sometimes it took me about 2 hours to get there. So if you open Lopez Canyon, it's going to be a few minutes from the valley. And I think it will be a great opportunity for other students, truck drivers like myself, to learn from them. And there's a lot of job openings right now for truck drivers. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Inigas. Larry Frank?
Hi, council members. We've been working for about 4 years to do our high-growth training partnership programs. This is one of our signature programs. We've been working with the Transportation Opportunity Program. It's always been tragic to me that we've had to do the training down in Long Beach because it's limited who could participate. We've been working hard to be able to get a place in Los Angeles to do training to make it more accessible. We have already a contract for $650,000 approved to do training with individuals. We would like to make some of these jobs available to the Valley. The reason that it's totally appropriate to the Valley is that a lot of the job commitments are in the food industry. Those food industry jobs, a lot of those commitments actually are jobs that are in the San Fernando Valley. We've worked hard to figure out where to do the training, to make it as impact, free as possible. And we really do believe this is our best chance to be able to find a place to be able to do the training. And there are real job commitments related to this piece of work. These are not training for some jobs that don't exist. There are real job commitments from employers that have been made, and we are hoping to be able to get your support to be able to move this program forward. We have right now 6 high-growth training programs. This is one of our key pieces of work that we would like to see accomplished as a city. El Proyecto has been a great partner, and also it's in the San Fernando Valley. It's tragic that the Valley always is asking, "Where's our share? Where's our chance to participate?" And we're doing our best to try to be responsive. We've made specific job commitments to residents of the Valley in terms of slots available as it relates to this program. We also, just so you know, there is a Bureau of Sanitation connection to it. We actually have lost through the early retirement, a number of people, so we've made a commitment also to our Class B licenses to have a small number of slots set aside to train people with Class B licenses that are Bureau of Sanitation workers, to get them to be Class A licenses. As you know, there's 200 trucks a day that go do the green waste program at Lopez Canyon. It says it's 8 trucks, but really it's 4 trucks. We have the funding to do 4 trucks, but we're asking, for the limit on 8 trucks. But as I said, there's 200 trucks a day that go in and out of the green waste facility at Lopez Canyon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm available for any kind of questions at any point, too, if there's anything useful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'll read into the record those cards that have submitted them for the file that support the project. Bernard Reinber, Angelina Lamar, Deborah Helt, Veronica Romero, John Balbuena, Andres Romero Sanchez, Rocio Romero, Marta Guerrero, Liana Guerrero, Marty Chavez, Emily Hansen, Michelle Duran, Edith Valencia, Raul Valiente, Jean Lee Nicasio, Shake Manukian, Lydia Salcido, Alejandra Hernandez. Okay. And to continue with our speakers, Sharon Ford.
As you said, my name is Sharon Ford. I am the conservation representative for the Sierra Club San Fernando Valley Group. Along with the Angeles chapter, we are urging the city to comply with its original agreement that the Lopez Canyon landfill site remain closed for the additional 18 years as promised. The original Angeles chapter document was written October 26, 2008. But I am here because the citizens were promised in that original agreement when the site was closed that it would remain closed. There has been no EIR as the department had shown. We feel that is very important. There are other things to be addressed besides the air quality, water, noise, etc. We are asking for full public involvement. This landfill, as been stated, will continue to settle. I have not once at any hearing heard anyone say what the impact of the trucks on this landfill that is continuing to settle and continuing to emit methane gas. We also we feel we're setting a precedent, that this not only setting aside the zoning for a variance and doing an M and D is actually setting a precedent for any other open space location in the city of Los Angeles. Since this agreement, it's now the city is going back on an agreement, is what this is. We're not opposing any truck driving school, but we oppose how this is being done, where this is being done, and we ask that all the methane collection funds that have been incorrectly used for other purposes, and that the funds be used only for those purposes which clearly fall within the category of environmental benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Vanessa May. After Ms. May is Daniel Wright.
Good day, committee members. My name is Vanessa May. I'm a resident of Lakeview Terrace and also a member of the Community Alliance for Open Space. Please support the appeal to stop the zone variance that would allow a trucking school to operate at Lopez Canyon. This area must retain its open space designation. I am not against the trucking school, just its location at Lopez Canyon. There are already existing industrial zone spaces in CD7 that could accommodate the school. If this is about bringing jobs to Lakeview Terrace, it should have been a part of the enterprise zone. It was deliberately and intentionally left out. Again, please retain open space at Lopez Canyon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daniel Wright. After Mr. Wright is John Perica.
I have a procedural question. Our firm represents the appellant, and I guess you're doing 1 minute. Is the appellant going to be given a chance to present our case?
Yes, the appellant should be given extra time.
We're happy to wait for, if you want to do public comment and then have the appellant, or I know that the supervisor's office needs to make some testimony early because he has to leave, or we can go, in a particular order. I think you had an order planned, right?
I just took it as I got the card. So what are the names?
I think I was the first on the preferred list. If you want a presentation from the appellants, I hope that we could get a little bit more than 1 minute. And then there may be some other public testimony. It seems that you've taken the project supporters and...
Yeah, I took the cards the way they're given to me as the supporters, and now the supporters of the project, now it's the appellants who are opposed to the project.
Well, there's the appellants, and then there's, of course, people here to give public comment. So, yeah, so...
Okay, and I have...
How do you wish...
People gave, and the way the cards were given to me, people gave general comment are being taken after people who put in the box support appeal, so...
Okay.
If the appellant wants to step up and speak now... or if you do you represent the appellants?
I represent, and I believe that my client intended that I begin the appellant's
Sure, we could do that, and you have some flexibility on the time.
On time,
Yeah.
okay, very good. All right. I'm Daniel Wright of the Silverstein Law Firm, 215 North Marengo Avenue, 3rd floor, Pasadena, 91101. On behalf of the Community Alliance for Open Space, yes, today is a double header, and what I would perhaps call Gail Goldberg's "Let's do just awful planning." The ZA's decision, quite frankly, is an embarrassment of the planning profession. Let the record reflect that the appellant's appeal document and analysis and the evidence in the record overwhelmingly establishes that the city and zoning administrator have failed to show a factual basis for any of the 5 required findings to grant a variance in an open space zone, what is supposed to be one of the most protected zones of the city. This is another controversial and politically sensitive case. The question remains, will this council uphold the fundamental zoning laws of this city, or is everything, including open parkland, up for a giveaway to the unions by this mayor? The truck driving school is unquestionably a meritorious program, but the urgency for workforce training does not justify a union-sponsored nonprofit cutting corners by grabbing Lopez Canyon for itself for 5, 10, or 15 years, and there are options here. You have not been told today by the ZA how long the options run. Or, more logically, should this nonprofit be using its ample ARA federal funding to find a more centrally located and appropriately zoned property for the conduct of this meritorious school? You are the policymakers of the city, and this proposed grant of a variance to put an industrial land use, even for 1 minute, is such an offensive precedent that it has drawn almost uniform condemnation from the Board of Supervisors, almost all Valley neighborhood groups and councils, and thousands of residents. I also want to point out that the potential grant of this variance by the City Council, while the council in the city is a recipient of federal workforce funds, on these facts, in this case, will also trigger a complaint to the Federal Office of Civil Rights that this project will have a disparate impact on the nearby minority community that will suffer noise, diesel fumes, and safety impacts for the foreseeable future. This will draw a complaint against the city for violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Title VI prohibits the discriminatory use of federal funds, even without showing discriminatory intent, and it is violated here when federal funds are used in a way that has a disproportionate, unjustified negative impact on minority communities around Lopez Canyon. In this case, Councilmember Huizar, you are asking about the environmental. There are activities of mulching going on this property, and there's other activities going on. There is, in this project, no analysis of cumulative impacts of all of these trucking activities combined together, and that is a fatal environmental flaw beyond the land use impact that the ZA disparages in her comments. In addition, in this project, despite the fact that this has been pending for over a year, the city and the Bureau of Sanitation and the nonprofit that's standing and hiding behind them here refuse to provide the proposed routes for the training of this school in the adjoining neighborhoods. And that is where the impacts will arise. That's why an environmental impact report is required if this is going to be the choice to go for Lopez Canyon. There's an easier route, one that can be supported by the communities, and that is to look for a more appropriate location and pay rent. I'll now defer to the rest of the appellants. Thank you.
Thank you. And does the appellant want to speak now? Marlene Rader? I'm sorry. John Perica. I'll go in the order then. Oh, you go in the order? Okay. John Perica?
Hi, John Perica, retired zoning administrator. When I had controversial cases, I always looked to try and find some type of reasonable middle ground on this. This project with time extensions can be here 30 years. What we're looking for is a way to allow the use, but a site that allows it by right. Putting this in an open space zone boggles the mind. There's no precedent that's required to be cited for a similar industrial use nearby in an open space zone. There's no city-imposed hardship. The zoning's been here for 30 years. To have sanitation wake up one day and say, oh my gosh, we can't do this, is kind of ludicrous. There are by-right sites the county has offered. The community has offered. There are by-right sites in the 2nd and the 6th council district. This can be a win-win situation. You can have this in a zone where it's permitted. You can have the benefits without the community suffering the negative impacts. Look for the compromise.
Thank you. Paul Novak. After Paul Novak is Kelly Aaron Decker.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Paul Novak, and I am the senior deputy to LA County Supervisor Mike Antonovich, who is out of town and could not be here today. Thank you for this opportunity again. Supervisor Antonovich represents the unincorporated communities of Cagle Canyon and Lopez Canyon. These are the residents who are directly impacted by the proposal before you today. Let me begin by saying that Supervisor Antonovich supports this project. Training unemployed individuals for high-paying union jobs in a down economy is an idea that everyone can get behind. The supervisor is adamantly opposed, however, to this project in this location. His reasons are detailed in 2 earlier letters which were sent to the entire City Council and the Mayor, which I've submitted copies of today. In the interest of your time, I will focus on the most important issue, which is the issue of open space. And the first point I would make is, what do we mean by open space? The City Council has adopted an open space element of its general plan. Your City Council has adopted an open space zone in your zoning ordinance. And lastly, your City Council, when it closed this landfill, to much fanfare and celebration, changed the general plan and zoning to open space. And now you are being asked to abandon all of this, to put an industrial use in the most inappropriate of locations, to call into question the integrity of open space throughout the entire city of Los Angeles. For a project that has a very small handful of supporters, as testimony at the ZA and North Valley APC hearings demonstrated, primarily employees of the city, consultants to the city, and outside organizations partnering the city. And why? All because the city staff is too lazy to find an alternate location when literally dozens have been suggested to them. You all know the city's open space resources: the Chatsworth Reservoir, the Cornfields Park in Chinatown, Eagle Rock's Hillside Park, Griffith Park, including the Hollywood sign, MacArthur Park, the open space in Latuna Canyon that we worked with the previous council member of the 2nd District to acquire, the Rim of the Valley Trail, the Santa Monica Mountains, and the Tujunga Wash. Would you put a truck driving academy in any of these locations? These are areas that the city has worked to protect, not to destroy. One would hope that the words open space have meaning, and that they would mean more than just when it's convenient. You have in front of you today a letter from John Perica, and I would point out that judicial deference has its limits. It's normally afforded to local cities and counties in land use matter, but it is a fact of law that you can't approve an application if you can't make the findings. Mr. Perica has submitted a letter which lays out a very comprehensive argument that these 5 findings absolutely and positively cannot be made. His logic is unassailable, and anyone who takes 5 minutes to read the letters can only come to the same conclusion. Simply put, the findings can't be made. He has essentially briefed the case for the opponents of this project. As Mr. Parika's letter states, to grant this variance would make a mockery of the zoning code and community plan process. The grant of a variance would be hypocrisy. While the city requires the public to follow the limitations of the community plans, the city itself does not have to follow the same plan restrictions. In conclusion, I would point out that Mr. Parika's letter contains very strong words. In this instance, he is 100% right. Honorable council members, Supervisor Antonovich implores you, please do not, quote, make a mockery of your own rules. Do not contribute to the hypocrisy. Join with your colleagues at the county, your environmental partners, 8 neighborhood councils, and 9 other community groups. Parika is right. There's an obvious win-win. We saw one here earlier today on another case. If these same parties can find an appropriate location in the southern part of the city, which they have done, they have found a site in the southern part of the city that is supported by Councilmember Ridley Thomas. I checked with his staff. Then there's no doubt that they can't find an appropriate location in the San Fernando Valley. Supervisor Antonovich extends his support to working with the city to find an appropriate location in the valley in a more commercial and industrial area. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Great. Thank you very much. Kelly Erin Decker.
Thank you. Pursuant to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, in accordance with the California Code, the zoning administrator's review of a proposed variance must be limited solely to the physical circumstances of the property in question, and I quote, financial hardship, community benefit, or the worthiness of a project shall not be considerations in determining whether to approve a variance. If you read Z.A. Lynn Wyatt's determination, the only factors that she delineates in making her 5 findings are the purported financial hardship of the applicant, the purported community benefit of the project, and the purported worthiness of the project. Not a single one of the 5 findings was made in keeping with the parameters of zoning law. At the original hearing and at the appeal, members of the Community Alliance for Open Space presented no fewer than 8 viable alternative sites in the surrounding locale, each of which is already appropriately zoned for industrial use. The applicant openly admitted at the original hearing that he never looked for any alternative site because he knew he could get Lopez landfill for free. The applicant should be required to pursue alternative locations for his project before this variance is upheld. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe Barrett. After Joe Barrett, Nancy Woodruff.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Barrett, and I'm the director of the Southern Tongue Alliance. The Southern Tongue Alliance is a nonprofit 501c4 group of volunteers whose focus is land use and planning issues in the Southern Tongue, Lakeview Terrace, Shadow Hills, East Latuna Canyon community plan area. The Southern Tongue Alliance supports the appeal filed by the Community Alliance for Open Space and strongly opposes the granting of a use variance for a truck driving school located at 11950 Lopez Canyon Road. A terrible and dangerous precedent will be set if the Planning Committee denies this appeal. The approval of a use variance threatens open space zoning throughout the city, if not the entire state. Commercial and industrial uses are not allowed by right in open spaced zoned land. Additionally, the creation of jobs is never a viable reason for shredding the open space designation. Councilmember Alarcon has never made any effort to research alternative locations for his project. Instead, he has recklessly worked to force an illegitimate use of open space zoning onto this rural neighborhood, and has even gone as far as to insult community members by labeling them selfish.
Sir, if you can wrap it up now, please. Your time is up.
Okay. We strongly urge the committee to overrule the ZA's decision, support the bill, and not allow this ill-conceived project to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Woodruff. After Nancy Woodruff is the applicant Marlene Rader.
Hi, Nancy Woodruff with the Foothill Trails District Neighborhood Council, which represents Lakeview Terrace, the densely populated single-family residency immediately south and to the west of the landfill. Over the last 2 years, hundreds of neighbors, dozens of community councils, neighborhood councils, community and homeowners association, the entire County Board of Supervisors and a state representative have written letters against the placing of the truck driving school on top of Lopez landfill for a variety of very legitimate reasons. City Council passed unanimously both in 1996 and 2007 to zone the landfill open space. In a February action, Council approved the Truck Driving Academy without any public outreach, unlike in 2003 when the neighbors were consulted and reluctantly agreed to a temporary mulching project as an environmentally appropriate activity during closing. That mulching has increased exponentially due to transfers from other facilities due to residential complaints from those facilities.
Okay, you can wrap it up, please. Your time is up. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Your time is up. If you could wrap it up.
Your committee did approve a similar appeal 2 years ago, and we want you to take a look at that appropriately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marlene Rader?
Thank you.
And just for an explanation on time, the applicant, the appellant, and the elected official representative got flexibility on their time. Just people are wondering why some people got more time than others. And this is the appellant, so her time will be flexible. Thank you.
I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Thank you. A lot of the stuff has been said, and I'm sure you'll hear more of it. I live next to this landfill, and this landfill is in the post-closure stages, and the last deck to close is scheduled for 2012. That means the people that have lived around this landfill and put up with the noise, the stench, and all the environmental hazards would have some kind of reprieve. But allowing the zone variance, we will have to put up with another 15 years. This constitutes significant impacts. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I hear the rumbling of trucks. They continue until lunchtime at 11:30. They pick back up at noon and continue till 3:30 in the afternoon. I go inside my house, my windows have to be closed, I have to turn on the radio or the television to drown out the noise. These impacts are real. More importantly, to me, living in that area, is the open space zoning, and it does set the dangerous precedent. Clearly, by the numbers of stakeholders opposing this variance at the Lopez landfill that represent the neighborhood councils, the community organizations, and the individual letters, this constitutes a critical mass. Our elected and appointed officials are stewards of the public trust, and it is incumbent upon them to listen and respond to their stakeholders and not jeopardize the quality of life in the community. Now you have the opportunity to restore the trust in government and support the appeal for the benefit of the public good. The council file that was passed in 2007 is here, and I've brought it to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike O'Gara. After Mike O'Gara is Catherine Paul.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike O'Gara. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Sun Valley Area Neighborhood Council. The community has a right to regain the use of this land for open space recreational use, which was promised to them. It's suspicious that the city has not taken steps to return this property to the citizens for recreational use, and the city planning department keeps granting variances to other city departments for uses outside of anything imagined by the surrounding communities. I think an argument could be made that this has been and continues to be a bad faith effort on the part of one or more agencies of the city to drag out the closure of this facility for the express purpose of using the land for city purposes and not for the open space promised to the community. Sun Valley Area Neighborhood Council requests that the city, the Bureau of Sanitation, immediately take steps to fill out all required paperwork and any other requirements to start the clock on the required 30 years for full closure of this landfill. By not completing these requirements, the city will now be able to keep complete control of this land for over 44 years instead of the normal 30-year span. They've had 14 years to put put in the paperwork and they haven't done it.
Thank you
and
very
it's
much.
a long drive from the harbor to the valley for people down there who want to go to this school. And the trucks, the 8 trucks are diesel trucks. The 200 trucks running in there are non-diesel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Catherine Paul. After Catherine is Linda Joyce Hornick.
My name is Catherine Paul. I'm a neighbor of the landfill. Not only has the Bureau of Sanitation ignored public process, as shown in this document, which I believe you've already received, it has lost its credibility for those of us who have tolerated the landfill for the past 35 years. And now they are requesting another industrial use for another 15 years. The Bureau of Sanitation gives conflicting messages to the community on various topics such as landfill closure dates, revegetation dates at the landfill, effects of the green waste facility on the community, and plans for recreation. Instead of an EIR for the Truck Driving Academy, the Bureau of Sanitation used an MMD borrowed from the 2003 mulching facility. Then, because the MMD was problematic, according to the city attorney's office, they found that they could certify the MMD through a zone variance. Meanwhile, at community meetings, we were told again and again that we would have a hearing on the MMD. This has not happened, and it is now impossible. This is not about jobs, it's about land use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda Joyce Hornick. After Linda is Bud Terusa.
Good afternoon. A lot of what I've said has been, what I was thinking of has been said. However, I did take a land tour up at the landfill on June 2nd, and despite people saying it's empty dirt, there is animal life, there's low vegetation. It is truly and can become open space. Therefore, I support this appeal, and I do believe that the primary responsibility of the Bureau of Sanitation should be closure and settlement monitoring of the former Lopez landfill, not its conversion into a patchwork of industrial and commercial development. The mulching facility has expanded beyond any presentation to the community, and I feel that it also is not appropriate, but at this point we're talking about a truck driving academy being added and the number of trucks being added. I feel that the fact that the former Lopez landfill it lies within the rim of the valley corridor, and there's a 3-year federal study of this area that just began, and it was announced on June 5th of this year, and it will be endangered by adding industrial uses to this site. Please close all commercial and industrial uses and allow this landfill to fulfill its open space potential for public and wildlife benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Bud Terusa. After Bud is Lucille Saunders. Hi, Bud. Is this Terusa?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Bud Terusa. Good afternoon. I'm a longtime resident living right next to that landfill. And look, I'm a blue-collar guy, and I hope these guys all get great jobs. I'm just opposed to where it's at. Another problem I have is a taxpayer. They say that the funding is going to come from taxpayers' dollars. The state's bankrupt. The federal government is $13 trillion in debt, and you have taxpayers' dollars to fund this. I heard a gentleman say that these jobs are readily available. So if they're going to get these jobs, and the education is by nonprofit organizations, let these guys get the jobs and then pay back to the people who train them. But no taxpayers' dollars should go for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucille Saunders. After Lucille is Michael Trivich.
Thank you. Lucille Saunders from the La Brea Willoughby Coalition, and you have my letter, Commissioners, on this subject, and this is regarding citywide land use issues, zoning abuses, and citizen input. The La Brea Willoughby Coalition joins members of the Community Alliance for Open Space, over 50 landfill neighbors, several neighborhood councils, the Sierra Club, all 5 Los Angeles County Supervisors, and the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy in support of the appeal of the Lopez Canyon truck driver, and I hope not, Academy variance for industrial use in this open space. We urge you to support the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Trivich. After Michael is Peggy Burgess.
Good afternoon, Councilman.
Good afternoon.
I am a retired Cagle Canyon resident. I view and hear the trucks driving to and from the Lopez Green Waste Recycling Facility from my living room couch. I represented the community on its design. We were given assurances that the facility design would not generate any backup alarms. I hear these backup alarms daily. We were given assurances that the earthen berm would prevent any machinery noise from our community. Again, I hear it daily. The proposed truck driving academy is located above and adjacent to the Green Waste facility. Inherent in truck driving training is the primarily backing up of 4 trucks all day long. We will be doing this simultaneously daily, 4 trucks. This noise is far beyond what is expected in an industrial zone facility. It is unnecessary and inappropriate for our rural community. I request that you recommend to support our appeal and deny this variance. Thank you.
Thank
Allow
you.
me my
Peggy.
retirement in peace and quiet.
Thank you. Peggy Burgess. After Peggy is Ernest Hilger.
Hi, Peggy Burgess, North Hills West Neighborhood Council Land Use Committee member. I'm going to be very brief. You have to deal with the concerns of the residents who live in that area, not transients bust in from some other location who do not have to live with the long-term consequences. It's the stakeholders who live in that area that will have to live with these long-term consequences, and you really have to support this appeal. This is not a good project. It does not belong in open space. It will impact every single other open space in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Ernest Hilger. After Ernest Hilger is Nina Royale.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Ernie Hilger. I'm the Vice President of North Hills West Neighborhood Council and the Land Use Chair. We, as a neighborhood council, have agreed with all the points and issues raised in the letter of appeal filed by the Silverstein Law Firm on May 4th, 2010, on behalf of the appellants, and a copy has been submitted, and hereby incorporated in a letter we sent to you of appeal and attachments thereto as a part of this letter. Additionally, we would emphasize the following. The precedent for using open space for privatized industrial uses violates the existing statutory zoning for this area zoned OS, open space, and will open up all such areas throughout the city to undesirable development. The process employed is legally flawed to privatize an area zoned open space. The wishes of the impacted citizens must live with the long-term consequences have been ignored by the applicants. The zoning administrator and the North Valley Area Planning Commission, the Plum Committee, and the City Council must be sensitive to the concerns of the neighbors who must live with those long-term consequences. The character of the local community must be determined by those who live and work there, and not by outside special interests.
Thank you. We can wrap it up, please.
All right. The quality of life in the area must not be subject to the unfettered will of the highest bidder or political entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Nina Royale. After Nina Royale is Robert Blue.
Good evening, council members. I'm Nina Royal, and I'm representing the Sunland Tujunga Land Use and Neighborhood Council. And the Neighborhood Council from Sunland Tujunga is supporting the appeal by Marlene Rader. And we are requesting that you keep this land as open space, as promised by Councilmember Ernie Bernardi, who mitigated these mitigated the fact that this land would stay open space for their 25 to 30 years of suffering the ill effects of the Lopez Canyon landfill. I'm asking both of you how you would feel as council members if you did these mitigations to this community and then later it was repealed. They, in good faith, allowed this landfill to take place along with the mulching facility, and now they're also taking remnants from the horses as a community service, not realizing what was going to transpire. You've never heard of them taking out a parking lot and putting in a park. Please remember this when you make your decision of how this is going to affect the integrity of the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Blue.
My name is Robert Blue. I'm in support of the appeal and against the project. I actually had an opportunity to work at Lopez Canyon. I worked on the capstone microturbines that were installed around 2003, 2002 timeframe. I'm actually quoted in MIT Technology Review. I'm very familiar with the area and the facility. It is very much a good candidate for open space. And also on projects in general, and especially this project, it's a really good example of a false choice where you're given jobs or open space. That this isn't necessary to do, just like it isn't necessary to do high density overdevelopment or jobs. It's not a choice of one or the other. You can have both. Just, so I would respectfully suggest that you find a properly zoned by right site to put this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maya Zettler.
Maya Zettler on behalf of VICA, Valley Industry and Commerce Association. VICA is here today to express our strong support for this academy and its proposal, and we respectfully request that you oppose this appeal before you today. We believe this project is not only good for the Valley, but it is good for the entire city of Los Angeles. Our community and our city is currently facing the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression. We need this much-needed program. The Truck Driving Academy, as you have already heard today, will occupy only 1/4% of this 600-acre site. That's just 1.6 acres, just 0.25%. Using this fraction of the land, it will generate significant economic benefits for the city and for the lives of many people affected by this program. This VICA would rather the City of Los Angeles allow the Truck Driving Academy to operate and provide public benefits towards creating career opportunities, jobs, and training programs on a site that would otherwise be unsuitable for public use for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, we have a number of cards that they have submitted their name for supporting the appeal, but did not wish to speak. Zia Shields, Timothy Burgess, Nancy Jones, Cheryl Smith, Terry Hack Church, and Sandy Engel. And our final speaker is a representative from Council District 7, Faisal Al-Sadi, representing Councilmember Alarcon.
Good afternoon, council members. Faisal Al-Sadi, Councilmember Alarcon's Planning Deputy. I won't take up too much of your time because it's almost 5 o'clock here. I just wanted to relay that there is a significant amount of support for this project. And I just have to say that there have been a number of factual errors in the opposition. There was a noise study that was completed. The site, it was an actual former landfill, so unfortunately it's a bit misrepresenting to compare that with the Pacoima Wash, for example, that was an open space zone for 30 years. My boss was the council member that did initiate the open space zoning and remains committed to a community park at this location. And the state law requirements basically dictate that the site will be unusable but for public use for 30 years after the final phase of closure, the final phase of closure on the top deck. And the top deck is supposed to close next year. So that would be 30 years from that point. What the request is before you, the request is for 5 years. It's for a 5-year period that will not any way impede the community park in the future. In addition to that, this is not a precedent. This body and this council and this great city, along with a number of other cities, have in fact granted variances on the open space zone just recently last year for a YMCA to allow parking because that did amount to a significant public use. In this case, you have a situation where the site cannot be used for open space dictated by the general plan. And the zoning administrator has found that. You have an M&D that's been certified and not challenged and is a legal document. You have a unanimous approval from the Area Planning Commission. And the Bureau of Sanitation reps, I think, are here. The site cannot be a place where we go out and plant trees. The vegetation on the site has to remain free, so they have to go in with trucks and actually take out vegetation, and that's because when rainwater comes down, we can't have vegetation on that site that basically brings down water into the landfill. Just one thing on other sites. We did receive a number of sites from the community, and that is documented in the ZA approval. It's of note to note that the 7th Council District has one of the lowest vacancy rates of industrial land in the country. We have about a 1.5% industrial vacancy rate, which means 98.5% of all our industrially zoned land is actually occupied. So that's extremely high. This is about jobs, and the council member just wants to relay his commitment to the open space zone, which he initiated, and the use of a community park, and his initiatives to plan for community parks. But we are in this unique time frame, and it's about time in life, as you guys know. And this is a request for a 5-year use during a period where it cannot be used for anything else. And just very quickly, I just wanted to run down the organizational supports. This request before you is supported by the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, the Los Angeles Mission College, the Los Angeles Community Colleges, the Valley Economic Alliance, the Pacoima Chamber of Commerce, the Pacoima Neighborhood Council, the Mission Hills Neighborhood Council, the NAACP LA Chapter, the Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles, the Clergy and Lady United for Economic Justice, Pacoima Beautiful, VICA, Icon CDC, SEIU, the Teamsters, Lane, El Proyecto. I've submitted for the record over 300 signed community letters with addresses on there to show that they are in fact residents of the city of Los Angeles, and of course our great mayor and Councilmember Alarcon. So thank you very much, and I urge you to sustain the North Valley Area Planning Commission unanimous approval of this, as well as the zoning administrator's approval of this project as well, and to forward this on to full council with a committee report approving the project as is and denying the appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Krikorian.
Excuse me, before you leave, I have a couple questions. The first was, you said that this would be for a 5-year period. The original plan was to do a 5-year period with 2 options for 5-year extensions. So is that no longer the case?
Correct. So the request before you today is for a 5-year period. If for whatever reason the top program wishes to extend past that point, they would have to come back to the city and apply for a brand new variance. We don't know if that shall be the case, but as you heard by the deputy mayor before your body, this organization has received federal funding. They want to utilize this federal funding. We believe that this will be done in an environmentally sensitive way, not to impact neighbors, and so the request is only for 5 years.
And the federal funding would not extend beyond that 5-year period, so they wouldn't have continuing operating
Correct. That's my understanding. I would, if there's a rep from the mayor's office, I would perhaps ask them because they do the applications for that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Frank, is that right?
Mr. Frank, if you could speak into the mic, please.
I think the mayor's office would be fine with the 5 years. We have the funding right now to be able to do this program. There's an exigency to actually spend these ARA dollars as well. So I think a 5-year without an extension would be absolutely acceptable to the mayor's office.
5 year with no options, is that what you're saying?
You know, without an option.
Oh.
I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm just trying to clarify, what's the written agreement right now, or what's on the table? Is it 5 years with additional options, or what's, the planning staff is coming up, so, somebody come up.
Good afternoon, Khalil Garis, Bureau of Sanitation. The proposed lease agreement, the way it's drafted at this time, is a 5-year with 2 5-year option. This particular lease agreement has not been approved yet. It's the prerequisite for that is the approval of the zoning variance. Right after the approval of zoning variance, this particular lease agreement could be modified to just have only 5-year term without the options.
Okay, so the 2 option periods are only contained within the property lease, but are irrelevant to the zoning.
Exactly. The zoning approval, the condition of zoning is only for 5-year period.
Okay. The appeal, planning staff please come up, please. The appeal mentions that the Bureau of Sanitation prepared the environmental documents and that it should have been the planning department. Is that an issue?
That's not an issue. I think if you look at a number of different public projects that have occurred throughout the city, for example, we have fire departments that have been recently improved, or new facilities built throughout the city under Prop F funds over the last 10 years. And if you look at a number of those facilities, they were all conferred MNDs, or negative declarations, by the Bureau of Engineering in association with the fire department. And those projects were approved by the city council. We have similar projects that are on public land that also have to do with shelters, animal shelters, as well as libraries. So there are a number of projects where the public works, both entities work together within the city, and where the planning department has worked with, whether it's Bureau of Engineering, Department of Building and Safety, Department of Transportation, all on similar types of projects.
The impacts, what were some of the significant impacts? Was it noise, air quality? What are the significant impacts?
The Bureau of Engineering under the MND did an initial study, and the impacts that were disclosed as potential impacts were air quality, noise, aesthetics, and transportation circulation. They looked at worst-case scenarios in regards to all of those, and in looking at the impact analysis, ultimately, based on a worst-case scenario, they did not breach any of the air quality impacts, nor did they do with the noise impacts or the aesthetic analysis and the transportation circulation. I imposed additional impact measure, or additional measures in regards to what I felt were appropriate in regards to the concerns of the public, and that isolated specific areas where, beyond what was imposed under the MND, and those measures identified locations where they specifically could not route trucks. And so if you look at the conditions of the determination that I issued and that ultimately was sustained by the Area Planning Commission, they impose those conditions also. It outlines a strict guidelines as to how the community works with the neighborhood councils and the council district and the applicant and the Bureau of Sanitation and Department of Transportation to identify specifically where those trucks will be going on and off site.
Great, thank you. I have one more question for the mayor's staff, but do you have any questions right now for the planning staff before she goes?
Yes. I just wanted to follow up on that last point about limitations on off-site routes. Where is that? Where is that?
The locations themselves.
No, where is it documented? By what mechanism would it be enforceable?
The determination that was issued by the Area Planning Commission incorporates the conditions of approval in regards to the variance, and within those conditions it stipulates a 7-point condition that identifies specifically the process as to how everything is supposed to evolve in defining the location and route of trucks and timing of trucks during the day and operational hours prior to any sign-off by the zoning administrator or there being conferred any sort of permits in regards to use of that site.
So that process has not been completed yet to
Has not been
determine-
completed, no. Not to my understanding. I know that there have been some discussions that have transpired between the different parties, but I don't think ultimately they've come to any sort of final decisions nor actually defined locations. The conditions themselves stipulate where they can't drive, though, which means that the neighborhood south of the projects of the landfill site is off limits. They will not be able to drive within that area. They go from Lopez Canyon to the freeway, or along Paxton to the freeway, get on and find another place to get off and do their exercise if they need to do it within the community. But all of that needs to be stipulated prior to them getting sign-offs to be able to move forward and conduct the activity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and just want to mention for the record, the public hearing is now closed. And Mayor Frank, if I could, Deputy Mayor Frank, is that your appropriate title? Did I call you the right thing?
It's a deputy dog.
Deputy dog.
Yeah.
All right. Some of the speakers mentioned alternatives. Now, this is a great program. You know, who wouldn't be against jobs? Number one issue in the country right now. Going to put our federal dollars to work, etc. It sounds to me like it's the location. And what other alternatives do you have? I mean, there seems to be some opposition to this. One of the things is it's a great job, but let's locate it someplace where it makes sense for everybody. How would you respond to that question?
So we have looked at all other possible locations in the San Fernando Valley, and this is the one location that we think that we can actually operate our school on. There is a couple other schools that operate that quite honestly have a much bigger impact on the community, that actually drive through some of the streets. It's not just industrial zoned where some of the other truck driver schools operate.
Mm-hmm.
This is, we believe, as minimal impact. I think the issue of the open space is the issue I think that's at the heart of the nub of this issue. But, I think if we put a 5-year limit on it and we, are able to prescribe exactly where the driving happens off-site, I really believe this is the least impact we can have in the San Fernando Valley in terms of still providing the training and providing the jobs to the valley. We looked at Whiteman. We looked at a number of different places, for possible operations.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Krikorian? No. I'm of the opinion that the proper evaluation has been done by the planning department. My questions regarding the proper environmental review were satisfied. Whether this is the best location once you take that out of the picture and you ask yourself whether this is the best location or not, you do have the local council member who supports this and some other organizations who support this. Granted, there's opposition and people who believe we shouldn't have it there, but I'm of the opinion that all other matters have been met. I'll vote to deny the appeal and support the project. Ms. Krikorian?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I've spent an extraordinary amount of time and on this issue and paid a great deal of attention to it because there are really important issues being presented by both sides of this discussion. I've even toured the site. I've been speaking with my constituents about this for, I think, about a year on this particular thing. And I think that we've seen almost unanimity today in the sense that this Academy program is a very important program, very worthwhile, will produce real results, and is something I think that even the appellants generally support. I also have to say that to some extent, I think that the concerns about the actual environmental impacts of the operation of this particular program might be, the appellants might be overly concerned to some extent about the environmental impacts of this particular operation in this particular site, especially given the extraordinarily greater impacts that are already going on there with the green waste operation, which is far more impactful on the community. But that being said, I'm really concerned about this issue of precedent in changing open space zoning. And I am very mindful of the fact that it's for a limited duration of time, minimal impact, in my view, actual impact, but I'm very concerned about us adopting a process by which we can make a political decision as a body to find that the open space zoning that we have in place is not convenient, and that some other process should be put into that zoning. I'm concerned that there is precedential impact that would come from this, and that other open space zoning could be impacted by this. And then I haven't been entirely convinced that there are no other alternatives possible to allow this very worthwhile program to go forward. And weighing those two, I see that there is possibility for the Academy still to move forward, even if this is not the site. But once that unfortunate precedent is established, that's irrevocable, and we can't take it back. Even if it's just for a short time, that precedent is then going to be relied upon. And, you know, I perfectly understand that this is property that isn't susceptible to recreational use now, or even 10 years from now. It just is not. I've been on the site, and it's not a site that anybody is going to be using anytime soon. But that's not the whole purpose of having open space zoning. Open space zoning is not just to encourage recreational use. It's to maintain property as open space, whether a human being ever walks on it or not. It's to take a certain amount of property off of the shelf for purposes of development. And I think if we fall into the trap of saying, well, you know, there's nothing else that we can do with it recreationally, then we get away with some of the important concept behind preservation of open space. So for those reasons, today, I'm prepared to support the appeal. I do want to, thank you, but you know what, let me also say this too. Someone said that there was an opportunity for a win-win compromise. I think somebody else said that this was one of those examples of a false choice being created, and I agree with those speakers. From everything that I've seen from both sides of this, these are, you know, Councilman Alarcon's office talked about the fact that he was the one that, you know, was behind this being zoned as open space. I very much believe that he is committed to maintaining that open space. I also think that, you know, the appellants are, you know, pursuing this in good faith, and I believe them when and I believe in their sincerity when they say they support the concept of this trucking academy. So this is really one of those times when I think these sides ought to be getting together and having a productive conversation about how we achieve these objectives. Rather than making this into World War III on either side, I really think that this is an opportunity to try to find the win-win results that can produce jobs in the valley and still be respectful of our open space. So I would encourage both of the sides to not consider this the final chapter, but to actually be mindful of each other's legitimate concerns and good faith, and let's move forward to try to find a win-win situation. I think it can be had, but for today, I'm going to support the appeal.
Okay. So we would recommend this to full council on a 1-1, and when will this be heard in full council?
Terry Kaufman, Messiah City Attorney's Office. I was just going to say that the report would be submitted without a recommendation, and then it's going to require a council motion to act on the file when it goes forward.
Okay. So let's be clear. So there's no recommendation. As it gets to council, it would have to be moved in some direction, and typically it is done by the chair or the council member of that district. So I'm just laying out the scenarios of what happens in council. Okay, thank you. And what date, do we know? The 30th. Okay, thank you very much. Next item.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes,
just say
sir.
one more thing? I don't want to sound like Pollyanna here, but, we hear a lot of really controversial things in this committee, and very contentious things. I have to say that this is one of those things, but both sides really need to be applauded, I think, for the extraordinarily respectful approach that you took to this debate. I think it was a very productive discussion. I hope that you'll continue it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's something there, some compromise. I know. Next item, please.
The next item, council members, is an appeal by Regents Loft LLC. They're appealing the action of the Transportation Committee, which denied a request to waive a 7-foot street widening requirement along Regent Street and CD10.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we ask the people leaving the chambers to please leave quietly? If there's a discussion you need to have, please have them outside so that we could continue this meeting. So it's item number 7? Okay. Okay, I've just been handed a note that we may wish to continue this item for 1 week. The applicant on this project here today, or the representative, yes. Would you concede to 1 week? Are you okay with continuing this 1 week?
I guess we can. I'm just Kevin McDonald, for the record, representing the appellant.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what's leading to this request.
Pardon me?
I'm just wondering why you are asking to continue.
CD10, an applicant. I got this note. So you can request the...
I didn't request it, but...
oh, okay. Okay. Do we have any items left?
Yes, Councilman. Item 9 is a closed session item. It's a city attorney report.
Okay. Let's clear up this confusion.
For the record, I don't object. I think we have enough time. The agenda indicates we have until July 2nd. So as long as we can make sure we meet that time frame, I don't have an objection. I just want to make sure whatever is causing the confusion gets cleared up so we can take care of it next week.
Is CD10 here, a representative from CD10 here? No? Okay, we'll go on to the next item. In the meantime, we could contact CD10 and the applicant and see.
That's fine. I'll discuss it with staff. Thank you.
Okay. Next item.
The next item, council members, is a city attorney closed session report. And this is a lawsuit relative to the city's general framework.
It's a closed session item?
Yes.
Okay, please clear the chambers.
Councilmember Huizar, you have some members of the public, I think, that submitted cards.
Do we have a public comment card on this? I'm sorry, let me see. Oh, yes, we do. We'll first hear the public comment, and then on this item, and then we'll have this item in closed session. Robert Blue.
I believe this item is related to the city requirement for a report, and it also relates to the issue of the infrastructure. Really what we have is, first of all, a rubber stamp of almost every project, no matter how high or how dense. And I don't think we're really taking an honest look at the issue of sustainability, and also, you know, if you ever read the book Cadillac Desert, the issue of water supply issues. And we can apply LEED standards and low water usage appliances and energy efficiency, but there's only so much total water you can consume. So if you allow high density development or moderate density development, both with the same standards, you're going to be using a lot more. And it makes no sense when there's so much extreme restrictions on water usage that you would allow high density development. And given that, we should have an accurate and real report as required in the law. So that's what I would hope you consider when you study the merits of this case. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could clear the chambers now, and I didn't see it here. Can you... Item number 9? No, we still have two cards under public comment, but we take those at the end of the meeting. Okay. We don't know. Apologize. It's the nature of this. So we could clear chambers, please, and then we'll